who can answer any technical questions about the project as well. So just as a point of kind of correction, also we did submit for a sign permit for the property as well. So I didn't quite see that on the agenda, but that was also in addition to our submittal. So maybe when we get to that point, if we can also act on that as well, would appreciate that. So just a quick background before I go into the PowerPoint. I entered into an agreement on the Anderson property, and this is off of Oakdale Road in the town of Waukesha in July of 2017. And I began to work on some concepts and designs for the project. I met with the town planner on 10/5/2017, which was at the time Jamie Robarchuk, and he recommended that we use the newly adopted town zoning for the property. After coming up with some designs, we had a dirt meeting, I guess you call it, with Waukesha County, Town of Waukesha, Parks and Land Use, the DOT, DNR, among other agencies. And at that meeting, there were several suggestions, and that they mainly suggested that we look at doing a condominium development as well. And part of the reason for doing that is to implement and use the land better, basically, so that we were conserving more of the space and also just taking advantage of some of the natural topography, so we weren't, perhaps using, there's some great issues in some spots, so we're able to kind of pull the buildings forward a little bit better and make better use of the property, as well as conserve land. So one of the things that was, I think, really great about that process is that we got really good feedback, not only from the county, but from the town staff, and we implemented a lot of those items into the project, and I think overall made a really good improvement to the project itself. I closed on the property on March 23rd, 2018. We've had follow-up meetings with the town planner and also with Waukesha County, showing the changes that we've implemented. And I think overall it's turned into a very good project. So as I go through the PowerPoint, you're going to see that we've, I think, created a really nice, beautiful, and cohesive development. And not only that, but I think besides having nice residences there, we're going to take and protect our natural resources there as well. One of the key points I wanted to make is that this development features over 56% of the site is open space, and we're using 30% less of the allowable density for the zoning. So we're not packing things in here, we're using space, I think, appropriately, and then keeping the natural areas open. So after I complete the presentation, at the end of the public forum, if there are any questions that need to be addressed or clarified with the town's permission, I would be willing to answer those at that time.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned, the subdivision is called Pebble Brook Hollow in the town of Waukesha. And this is the layout of the development. And the concept for this development is that we have there's some interesting terrain and things here. So the concept is the front section on the left-hand side is going to be single-family condominiums. And we have a lot of those designs there, and I can show those to you in a moment. In the back section will be a traditional 1-acre single-family residences with larger homes and different deed restrictions. So we will have deed restrictions that are more specific to the residences in the front half and a different set of restrictions for the residences in the back half. This is just a visual concept of what the entrance will be for the subdivision. So we'll have a nice entry monument sign off of Oakdale Road, as well as the boulevard entry. That entry lines up with the existing entry at Hazelhurst. So the Department of Transportation was good with the matching entries there. This is the overhead view of the property. So again, as you can see, it is on Oakdale Drive. It's right across the street from Hazelhurst subdivision and connects in with Poppy Fields. A little bit about the property, it's 88 acres. It features wetlands, rolling terrains, trees, and Pebble Brook Creek. There are, as I mentioned, 2 sections. So one of the things with the front section is that we are going to be using 6 different home plans, and they're going to have multiple fronts, so each one has 3 different fronts. So there's going to be a lot of variety in the construction. They are single-family homes at the end of the day, so they're going to look just like a traditional single-family home. They're just going to have a condominium aspect to it, and that aspect is partly because we're going to be doing shared septics and shared wells on those as well. And the back section again is 1 acre lots with custom homes. They will have a little higher restriction in the back section. So these are some of the homes that we're looking at doing, and you can also see the renderings, many more on the ground over there, and you're welcome to go look at those. So we have the Destiny model. The concept is we have 2 2-stories, 2 first-floor master bedrooms, and 2 ranch plans. The advanced model, which is a 2-story home. And you can see that we have multiple architecture, so we're going to have a traditional, a craftsman, and a French country exterior for each of the designs. The Imagine model, which is another 2-story. I do have actual pictures of this particular home as well as the Destiny, which I'll show you in a moment. Our Infinity model. Our Vision model, which is a ranch home. The Inspire model, which is another ranch model. And then this is an actual photo of an as-built model. This was actually featured in the Parade of Homes this year. So you can see it's got very interesting roof lines using a little bit more of the modern architecture. There's kind of a picture of the inside just so you can kind of see what the product looks like. This is the Imagine model. We built one of these in Menominee Falls. We completed it and actually sold very quickly. So these are sort of prototypes for us just to try a little different design. And so far they've been received very well. It's kind of an interior picture of the home. So as far as the project itself, there are numerous benefits for development in the town of Waukesha. Namely, it's going to create roughly $25 to $30 million in new taxable revenue for the town once complete. Based on a study by the National Association of Home Builders, extrapolating that data, if the 55 new homes that are built in this subdivision are going to add $3,096,500 in taxes and revenue for the state and local government, and 55 new homes will create approximately 244 new jobs. So as far as questions that people are going to typically ask about a development, obviously one of the major concerns for neighbors within the development is on property values and what's going to happen to my property values. I did a study through the Waukesha County website on taxes. In Poppy Fields, for example, the subdivision to the north, they have an average assessed value of $440,648 per county records. The lowest valued home on that website was $317,500, and the highest value was $630,000. In Hazelhurst, across the street, that subdivision has an assessed value average of $340,789. The lowest value is $308,600, and the highest value was $398,500. Pebble Brook Hollow will start at roughly about $475,000 for a complete package and could go up to $850,000 in the back section. So averaging out the sale price, we're looking at probably an average value of about $554,540. That would represent about a 25.8% higher value than Poppy Fields and about 62% higher than the Hazelhurst subdivision. So this will increase the value to all the homes in the area and I think enhance the community, and it's also consistent with the town of Waukesha, with the residential community. Next concern that people typically have with the development is traffic. Oakdale Road typically has about 4,000 trips northbound per day. Using a traffic study table, at most Pebble Brook Hollow would use about 390 trips per day. That's figuring about 10 trips per family, which is less than 10% of the road usage and would be well within the road's capacity. This development is low density. The max allowable density on this property is 77.9 units. We're only putting in 55 units, so that's 30% less than the allowable usage. As far as using land and overbuilding, we're using a new approved town PUD format, and that minimizes the amount of disturbed area that we have. 44% of the site is right within the road right-of-way, and 56% of the land will remain undeveloped and completely natural. Another issue sometimes with subdivisions is access. And I think one of the nice things with this development is that it's going to provide some improved access. There's a landlocked homeowner parcel down here to the south, and this will, by putting that road in, I can kind of show you on this one here, sorry, like right in here, connecting this road here will provide access to a previously landlocked parcel. And then, of course, this also improves the safety in the area because now we have 2 access points to Poppy Field, so it allows police and fire vehicles the option of entering off of Oakdale Road or from Glendale through the 2 developments, so that kind of opens up the roadway. We are also protecting the environmental corridor. We have a private road, Pebble Brook Court, which was made private at the recommendation of Waukesha County, which will help reduce the environmental impact. It moves the lots out of the steeper grade and preserves more of the land. And that was one of the things that we wanted to look at, was there was some grade there, so we were able to move those homes forward a little bit and out of that steeper grade. The addition of doing that also helped create more stormwater space on the southwest corner of the property. So we're talking about this area right here. This section here is where we have stormwater, and that was able to be pushed and made wider because this road was able to shift this direction. And that really helped improve the project. And this also conforms with the town pitch requirements for driveways. There's also going to be, as I mentioned earlier, shared wells and septics. There is an association with this, and one of the nice things with having an association for these homes, especially with the septic systems, is that the septic systems are going to be maintained as part of the association, so they're going to be pumped annually, whereas sometimes on single-family traditional homes, people forget to pump their septics and they tend to go longer than the 2 years that it's required. And that'll be part of our documents. The other thing is this association, because of the shared wells, is going to reduce the amount of wells that we put in the property, which should help the impact on the aquifer. And again, this has an association, so the association will help create uniformity. We are the land developer, we are the realtor, and we are the builder in this project, so we're doing everything in the site, so I think we'll have some uniformity there, which will be really nice. And as I mentioned, the septic maintenance will be covered under the association documents for the single-family condominiums. The single-family residences in the back, they will still have a traditional septic maintenance where they will take care of their own septic systems. We've looked into stormwater with Waukesha County, and we have several stormwater areas provided, and they were reviewed with Waukesha County, and they found those to be adequate. And they agreed that the areas set aside would, and the soil tests that we've done on those areas indicated that the infiltration basins would be functional. Our philosophy is to keep it local. I've been a town resident for 40 years. Belman Homes is Don Belman Homes. We've done numerous developments in the town, including Red Wing Hills, Cider Hills, Lexington Green, Coyote Crossing, Rolling Oaks 2, Mill Creek Preserve. We believe in working where we live, and we support our community as well. We build homes for wounded veterans as part of a charity. We just finished one up last year, and it's just something that we really believe in. So that's it for my portion of Submittal. Thank you.
Thank you. David, can you at some point get a copy of that to the clerk?
Yes.
Thank you. Sean, are there any points that you'd like to address that perhaps were missed, or things you want to clarify?
Sure, I would just go through a couple of my comments here, more related to the comp plan and the zoning ordinance. So in terms of the comprehensive plan, the plan for this property is shown as low-density residential, which is 20,000 square feet to 1 acre per dwelling unit, and then also environmental corridor. As mentioned, there's 55 units proposed, which results in a gross density of about 0.47 dwelling units per acre, or 2.2 acres for each dwelling unit. So it's roughly half of the density that's allowed in the town's comprehensive plan. So well within the limits. The proposed density is also consistent with the county development plan, which is similar, low density residential, 20,000 square feet to 1.4 acres per dwelling unit. The zoning for the property is R1. It's single family residence with some high groundwater conservancy and environmental corridor overlays on certain portions, which cover the wetlands, environmental corridor, and isolated natural resource areas. Portions of the property are also within the shoreline, the county shoreline zoning jurisdiction that is similarly zoned as the town's. It's R1 residential with high groundwater districts and conservancy and environmental corridor overlays. R1 zoning requires a minimum lot size of 1 acre, 150-foot lot width, 50-foot setbacks, and 20-foot offsets. So in order to create the residential lots that, so on the east side of the property, the lots range in size basically from, they range in size from 33,788 to 49,060 square feet with an average of 39,685 square feet. So in order to deviate from our 43,000, they have to utilize the PUD. In addition, in order to do the condominium development and those units, they would use the PUD as well. They would abide by all R1 setbacks for the single-family traditional lots on the east end of the property. That's, as I mentioned, the 50-foot and the 20-foot offsets. But that would differ for the condominium developments. In our zoning ordinance, there's specific conditional use review requirements for a PUD. And a PUD is allowed, you can consider a PUD basically to provide flexibility, to encourage the creation of common open area. And so it's a balance. So you flex the rules a little bit in return for more common open space to be preserved. So that's what you're basically evaluating tonight in one sense is what's being proposed worth the open space and the preservation, land preservation that you're getting. Some specific requirements of the PUD and the ordinance are that all sanitary provisions are approved by the county health department, that the proposed development is not contrary to the general welfare or economic balance of the community, and that benefits and amenities of the resulting development justify the variation from the normal requirements of the district in which it's located, and that all of the requirements of the PUD are met as set forth herein. So, Mr. Belman went over some of the calculations and some of the open space that's provided. When you do a PUD in the town, you basically take a look at your gross density, you subtract 80% of the wetlands in the property, and then you divide it by a density factor. In this case, the density factor is determined by the amount of open space that's preserved. And the amount of open space that's preserved in this particular development, as mentioned, was above 50%, but for the purpose of calculation of the density itself, you can only count 20% of the wetlands toward the open space preservation. So in essence, what's being preserved for the calculation purposes is like 39%. So when you preserve 39% open space, as mentioned, you're allowed to get up to 77 potential units. They're asking for 55, which is not the maximum number of units. In actuality, 56% of the site is preserved in some form in environmental corridors and wetlands and so on, but again, just for calculation purposes, I think it's important to make that distinction. Other provisions of the PUD provisions itself are that the common open space is clearly delineated in outlots or easements. All the open space is present in outlots on the property. On outlots 2, 5, 7, 9, and 10, these would be fractionally owned by each lot and condominium unit owner, as stated on the conceptual plan. Perpetual care and maintenance of the open space shall be provided for in an operational plan submitted and approved by the Town Plan Commission and Board. As mentioned, the petitioner is proposing a homeowners association for maintenance and management of those outlots I just mentioned, as indicated in the conceptual plan. There's wetland environmental corridor and isolated natural resource restrictions, and some stormwater management practice notes included on the plan. There's also a nature trail proposed as part of Lot 2. There's no other definitive operational plan provided, and we'd be looking to see that as part of the plat review process, or when a plat actually would come forward in the future to be approved by the Plan Commission and the Board. And again, all outlots would be owned by association comprised of lot owners and condominium owners. I mentioned the traditional single-family lots 1 through 19 on the east side of the property. Those are consistent with R1 in every way except the lot size deviation. The actual condominium unit lots, the condominium units on each of those outlots that are identified, those are outlots 1, 3, 4, 6, and 8. The units themselves, including the common condo land, average is about 17,423 square feet per unit. These require a 10-foot minimum setback, 25 feet from the private roadway, a 20-foot minimum building separation offset, and a 20-foot rear offset. These lots, as mentioned, the lots directly north of Poppy Field, range from about 1 acre to 2 acres in size. The Plan Commission should determine if by the substantial evidence presented tonight, the proposed lot sizes, unit sizes, setbacks, and offsets are appropriate, if they're appropriate, and that the development is not contrary to the general welfare or economic balance of the community, and that the benefits and amenities of the resulting development justify the variation from the normal requirement of the R1 district. The zoning ordinance also has general conditions, general review conditions outside of just the PUD development for any conditional use that's requested. These are that the PUD or the conditional use will not violate the spirit or intent of the ordinance, will not be contrary to public health, safety, or general welfare, will not be hazardous, harmful, noxious, offensive, or a nuisance by reason of noise, dust, smoke, odor, or other similar factor, or for any other reason cause a substantial adverse effect on the property values and general desirability of the neighborhood, except as may be specifically otherwise noted. Any such use shall conform to the building location, height, and area regulations of the district in which it's located, and the approving body may require compliance with such other conditions as may deem necessary in the specific situation. The petitioner has provided a letter outlining information related to traffic, property values, density, environmental conservation, and access and safety for consideration. That was also presented as part of the presentation tonight. The Plan Commission should determine if by the substantial evidence presented, whether the proposed conditional use satisfies or will satisfy, or by substantial evidence, the proposed conditional use does not or will not satisfy the above requirements. I won't go through the environmental. I think that was covered in the presentation, stormwater management. The only thing I'll add was circulation and access that wasn't covered was that Primrose Lane and Sage Road in Poppy Fields to the north are temporary cul-de-sacs, and as noted on that subdivision plat, those are to be extended in the future. So as staff, we did ask those to be extended as indicated on the subdivision plat. There's also another potential concern. There's a 50-foot gas easement that runs along the southern portion of the property, which is basically all the way down here, kind of curves up, and it goes over the top of lots 1 and 19. And we had some concerns as to whether or not you could fit a home and a septic system on those lots. And we ask, as if this moves forward, to present evidence that you can fit a traditional home and a septic system on those lots to make sure that they actually work. In terms of landscaping, the plan shows a landscape buffer out here on Oakdale Road. There aren't any planting plans for this buffer that have been provided. There's also, as shown in the presentation, the signage and the landscape median on the entrance on Oakdale Road, which includes, again, the monument sign. No specific plant materials are provided. Our landscape ordinance doesn't necessarily require a planting plan or specific plant material numbers for residential subdivision, but it may be nice to see exactly what's proposed to be planted in that buffer, as well as the median. As mentioned, the petitioner has submitted a sign application as part of the request and provided a drawing of the monument sign. In terms of our ordinance, we consider that a subdivision identification sign. There is no specific provisions in terms of size of that particular sign. It would just need to abide by the 10-foot offset from the right-of-way. In addition, there was also proposed a sort of marketing sign that was to market the property. This requires a sign permit. They're limited to a period of 1 year. Can be extended by the Plan Commission for successive periods of up to 1 year each. If the Plan Commission finds the development is actively proceeding. What's shown in the application is a 4-foot by 8-foot sign. It didn't include setback information, but again, that will need to be set back 10 feet from the right-of-way line. In terms of lighting, the developer is proposing pole lighting on each of the lots, and condominium units. Our ordinance requires those not to exceed 15 feet in height and be to be adequately shielded. And also in your packets, we've provided a conditional use worksheet matrix, as always, for conditional uses that outlines our specific conditions, our outside of the general conditions in the staff report. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions for the developer and/or Sean from Plan Commission and our board?
Yeah, I've got one. The condominiums, now we got a 20-foot distance between each building, is that the way I understand it and read it?
Yeah, the minimum distance would be 20 feet. That's being proposed between the buildings.
Now, how does it fit in with our ordinance?
Well, they're asking for a deviation, so the planning and development allows them to ask for reduced sizes. And normally require, in R1 zoning, we require 20 feet from the building to the lot line. There's no actual lot line on the condominium units, there's just a space between the buildings, and what they're proposing is 20 feet.
I guess my concern is, if there's, we don't have fire hydrants out here or anything like that, what happens if there's a fire on one and they're only 20 feet apart? Is that going to be a fire hazard, or how's that addressed?
That's not a question for the staff, in all due respect. Some of these questions are supposed to be being answered by the developer. You shouldn't be answering about fire and safety and his plans. This is his presentation, in all due respect.
I guess I just add one thing, that the fire chief has seen the plans, and he has sat in on a meeting.
I restate my position. This isn't your presentation. Please ask, I know you're just asking the questions, but they're not really questions that are pertinent to the staff, they're pertinent to the developer.
Would you like me to address that question?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in many typical residential subdivisions, there's a 10-foot side setback, which would ultimately, between two buildings, create a 20-foot space. And in the city of Waukesha, for example, that's very common, and that's not an issue in that community, or is it in many other neighboring communities as well. So I don't feel that that would be a fire hazard at all.
Thank you. Other questions?
I had a question about your calculations for average selling prices and the assessment analysis for the other neighboring subdivisions. In your calculations, did that include the average selling prices of the condominium units also?
Yes, it did. So the way that it was calculated was, again, I used the assessed value on the Waukesha County website for both subdivisions. I do have all those totals here. If the town would like those, I'd be glad to share that. And then as far as our project, I took an average sale price of the condominium homes, and then also an average anticipated sale price on the single-family homes in the back of the subdivision, and then, did the quantity of each and averaged it out.
And how did you come to the average selling prices that you're anticipating?
Well, I have several projects in the town of Waukesha, so I have a fairly good understanding of not only as a real estate agent, real estate broker, but as a builder in the town. So I've built and sold numerous properties, so I'm very familiar with what it would cost to build these projects and homes and what they've been selling for. So I just used my expertise and came up with those calculations.
And were any of those condominiums?
The single family, I'm not aware of many single family condominiums in the town of Waukesha. So I'm just using based on size, square footage, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, and method of construction.
So
for value.
like single-family homes?
It's very, very much like single-family homes. They're going to look and feel like single-family homes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions?
I've got just a quick question. This may have already been covered or it may be obvious, but it's your intention to do all of the construction of all of the residential units on all the property? Is that the intention?
Yes, that's correct. Now I am looking at doing this in phases. This is a fairly large development, so it'll be multi-phase and multi-year development. This will probably be a 5 to 7 year project for us overall.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
With that being said, what would be the first phase?
Well, I'm looking at doing the first. I would be looking at creating the entrance off of Oakdale immediately, and then I guess Keith, I don't know if your opinion on that. I'd be looking at doing this section first? Or are you looking more that we should make this connection?
We would probably make the connection on the north side first and leave that as the last phase.
Okay, did you,
It's gonna depend on what, as we do our grading numbers, as we balance the site, we don't wanna stockpile a bunch of dirt. So some of that we'll do is we'll work through the grading plan, determine where it makes logic to phase it. But the southerly cul-de-sac kind of stands alone, there could be a last phase.
so that information would be available when we do the preliminary plat. Obviously, this is just a conceptual at this point, so as we get more information, we can properly address that for you.
Thank you. Other questions? Then we can open it up for public comments at this point. Come on up to the microphone. Good evening. Name and address for the clerk, please.
Tom Waller, S52W25395, Poppy Fields Road. And my property abuts this property on the north side at Primrose. So I'm new to this. I've never been to a planning commission meeting. It's very exciting to be here. Got some fundamental questions and concerns about this project. I don't understand, as a matter of planning for the community, how we got to the point of approving condominiums that are adjacent to homes that are sitting on 1 acre lots. I mean, I understand the idea of having condominiums, but you're putting these condos on 17,000 square foot lots that are adjacent to nothing but 1 acre plus lots. And, you know, to the extent that there's a thought that this is all gonna mix together and look great, I would really question that. And certainly as a homeowner, I'm very much questioning what's gonna happen with regard to the density of those condominiums on the north side of that property that are abutting mine. What happens with the septic? What happens with the water, drainage, traffic, the rest of it? You've got a non-dense area, and you're just plopping an incredibly dense series of homes on that one little stretch there. So to me, that doesn't make any sense at all. I would call into question some of the numbers that were used with regard to assessed values versus purchase prices. I can't argue about purchase prices. I don't sell homes. But I do know that purchase price does not equal an assessed value, so it has that at least be thought about. I've heard nothing about what the plan is for abatement of noise, dust, traffic, and so on with regard to an existing subdivision of 20-some years. I question the notion that this somehow is in the general welfare and benefit of the community. And your job is to do the whole community, I get that. I'm looking at my little part of the community and definitely question it. I guess that's about it, to start things off.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up. Good evening.
Yes, my name is Felipe. It's West 228, South 5095, Milcon. I just have a small question about, it's concern about education. In other words, schools for all the kids, if this thing is passed through. Do you ever think about all those kids, what schools are going to be attended? 3 years ago, when we moved into Waukesha, town of Waukesha, without knowing about it, it was built the high school, Waukesha West. I just wonder how it's going to concern about all the families, where the kids going to attend for school.
Okay.
Also, a second question is, if this thing pass, it's about the septic systems. he mentioned that some people might forget to do that. I'm disagree with that. I believe every person here in the town of Waukesha have the responsibility to drain or call somebody for the septic. Second thought about it, he mentioned about some kind of community septic, something like that. If it's something happened to that septic, who's responsible for that? The 10 persons that are allowed to do that? Because once they develop something, you are entitled to all your property. In other words, you are entitled to your septic and your well. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just respond to the septic question?
Sure. Why
Because
don't,
I think it'll come up.
Brian, why don't you slide that microphone over so everybody can hear you?
I just want to respond to the septic system question. Waukesha County has an ordinance regarding the regulation of septic systems. And generally a developer, when they come to the conditional use phase, they are asking for conceptual approval for the design and development. They have done several soil tests out here. But upon, if they get approval for this project, then they would be required to do soil tests on every single lot, adjacent to every single building. The septic systems, when they are combined, there's ordinance requirements regarding that. So many units are allowed to be combined. There's maintenance agreements associated with it. If the system becomes large enough, the town has to accept long-term maintenance responsibility components. So that will all be reviewed and regulated in accordance with Waukesha County's septic ordinance. So I just want to make that clear to everyone here, that the subdivision plat can't be approved without approval in that regard.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Sal Creasy. I live at West 255 South 5479, which is right across the street from the property. I have...
Is that Oakdale?
Yes, Oakdale Drive.
Thank you.
And I have a major concern about traffic. I mean, I live on the road, and during rush hour, it's just terrible. I've had many vehicles wipe my mailbox out, like probably 4 times, take out the telephone pole twice, and I just see nothing but problems with this. Plus the runoff is, in springtime sometimes when we get a lot of snow and it melts, I mean, you get a lot of water standing right on the road. You have to put barricades up, because people sometimes go a little too fast, and if it gets icy, you're gonna end up right into that runoff area, which is maybe a good thing, you don't hit a tree or something like that. So I'm more concerned too with my groundwater. What's gonna happen to that when they start using pesticides on their lawns? And my well is only 65 feet deep. So is it gonna drain my water supply? If my water gets contaminated, do I file a lawsuit with somebody? I mean, I don't know. I guess that's my only concern there, traffic and runoff. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Farber. We, South 52, West 25093, Sage Court. Our lot abuts up to lot 10. We are the lot right behind the tree line on the other side. So the road is going to be going through, right now it's a dead end, and they're going to cut through and make that an open road. They're also doing that in Primrose over by his property also. I know some of the neighbors are very concerned about traffic coming through our quiet little subdivision from this new property, especially the construction traffic. We do not want, collectively, I know we've talked about this, we do not want any construction traffic coming through Poppy Fields. We want it coming off of Oakdale. I know somebody's already voiced that to you guys, and I hope that you guys can respect that for us. Another thing, I want to know about the restrictions, and I want to know if you looked at our restrictions and hopefully took some of the use some of the restrictions that we have so that they're cohesive with each other. So I'd like you to share what these restrictions are according to what the houses are gonna look like, what they're made out of.
Ma'am, you need to address the board and the plan commission,
Oh,
please.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I would like to know what these restrictions are, just so many things about, you know, pools and trailers, and I mean, just so many things. Let's see. I'd like to know about the walking path and the ponds, and if those are accessible to anybody, or those are just for the subdivision. If the Poppy Field people can come on in there and have a walk and float in their pond or whatever. Lot 10, I am, obviously because it abuts to my property, and we've had a wide open field behind us forever and all the privacy. I'm concerned to how that house is going to line up. I guess I've always envisioned backyard to backyard so that we're not both staring down at each other. There is a tree line, but during the winter we can see right through it. So wondering how you're going to propose that the property is sitting on that land. So of course I would prefer it to be turned the other way, not sideways. Last but not least, are there any condos in the town of Waukesha right now? Does anybody know? Because we feel that, you know, we moved into the town of Waukesha to avoid having condos and things of that nature. That's the specialness of the town, and we believe that it should stay single-family homes and not condos. And I do feel that these condos here are not reflective of our subdivision, and they, especially, he has a beautiful, humongous, amazing house, and that is going to totally degrade the value of his property, and probably many others that are near it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, let's run through some of the questions and get them answered if we could, Mr. Belman. So the first one I have is,
Sir, there was one other citizen that had a...
we'll get to it.
Okay.
First question I have for
Wait,
you.
they're all gonna talk. We have to stop and take questions every once in a while
Okay.
when we get too far away from them.
The first question I have is drainage and septics. What happens with the drainage and the septics?
Okay, so one of the concerns was regarding the septic systems. First off, we've done over 60 borings on the site already, so we have a very good idea of the soil conditions throughout the site. Many of the actual septic areas in the front of the subdivision have per conventional and not mound system, so that actually makes it a little more conducive to the setup that we have here with the conventional septics. So I think we have, in talking with our soil testing expert, he has no concerns about the capacity and the amount of area that we have allocated for the septic systems for those residences, especially without the amount of tests that we've done already. And we've presented that also to the Waukesha County Sanitary, and he's looked that over as well at this point.
Okay. The next question I had is, how is it good for the community? How is it good for the general community?
Well, again, town of Waukesha is considered a residential community. This is exactly what this is. This is consistent within the town. This is consistent within the PUD plan of the town. And I think I've properly demonstrated, based on the values, that this is going to be an increase in value to the neighbors, as well as obviously additional tax base. So I think this is very much consistent and also a benefit to the community.
Okay. On the first question, the drainage and stormwater management, how is that being handled?
So we do have as part of the association, we're going to have, and also with the subdivision, there's going to be a stormwater agreement. All the stormwater will be self-contained on the site, and that's pretty typical now. There will be stormwater and infiltration basins. Part of our soil tests also indicated that those areas that are set up for the water and runoff are adequate for that, and we have plenty of space allocated for that, so I don't think that will be a concern at all. And again, those areas are also going to be protected as far as the homeowners association. There will be dues for the homeowners association as well to maintain those areas, and that'll be part of that agreement with the homeowners.
Okay. What school system, what schools will students attend?
I'm not familiar with the exact school district in that area, so I don't know that I can answer that question. If someone else could, that would be appreciated.
Well, Waukesha School District.
It is
I mean,
Waukesha
is
School
it- is it
District.
West?
I believe it's West High School. I would be throwing a dart on the elementary.
Gotta be Rose Glen.
So I'll say Central and Rose Glen.
Next.
Les Paul, sorry.
Next, who is responsible for septic maintenance?
So again, on the condominium portion, that will be part of the homeowners association. And so everyone is going to have an equal undivided ownership of that condominium, because the condominium is the overall property. So everyone has, in that section, is going to have an equal ownership of that, and they will pay dues, and those dues incorporate maintaining those septic systems. So that's all going to be part of that homeowners association that everyone is a part of. On lots 1 through 19, that will be on the individual homeowner, just like any other in the town.
What is the difference between a condominium, a single-family condominium, and a single-family home?
Really, the only difference is just the ownership aspect of it. Again, these are going to look just like a single-family home. And the difference is that on a condominium, you would own from an area in on the property. So for example, you would own from either the paint or the drywall in on the residence. The exterior is owned by the condominium as a whole. So what happens is they have shared maintenance on the exterior. So part of their dues is to cover keeping the buildings maintained, keeping them painted, keeping the yards maintained, all those type of things. So actually, I think it'll be an enhancement because there'll be a lot of consistency there. They're going to be well maintained because everybody has an interest in each building looking good and looking consistent. And then the other aspect of it is that you don't technically have a lot. They're designed where there's a boundary shown, but you don't technically have, this is my exact lot, because again, you own a fractional ownership of that. So that's just sort of the difference. And I can get into common areas and limited common areas and association documents and all that if you'd like, but I think that's all incorporated within the condominium, and we'll have those documents prepared for the project.
Okay. The next concern I had is construction traffic and traffic concerns on Oakdale. Can you take steps to make sure that construction traffic is not going through the subdivision?
Yes, we can. First of all, we typically work with only 1 or 2 different road building companies, so we can work with them on that. We can also have a sign put in to say, you know, where all construction traffic is to be directed through. We can also put on our plan sets when we send them out to our trades that we want all the trades to go through Oakdale. I mean, quite honestly, they're going to go down Oakdale and go, and they're not going to go through a winding residence. It's just, there's a main artery that's going to make a lot of sense for our trades to go through that way. As far as the road, again, we've had that traffic report and data pulled. Again, I want to reaffirm that if you look at the map here, this entrance is exactly aligned with the entrance across the street, which is what the DOT prefers. The DOT was at the DIRT meeting. They had a chance to review this project. They had no concerns with that at all. So,
What is the current